Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dear Abby. I'm your host. My name is Abby. Welcome back. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Thursday, whatever you're doing, and I'm very excited for today's episode. I think it's a much needed topic and a topic I will never get sick of talking about, and that is self-compassion and the lie and the annoying temptation to always compare ourselves to other people and other things going on. I had actually a really hard time picking something to talk about because I wanted to talk about 1,000 different things, but most of them had to do with just being overall kinder to yourself, and I think ways to just feel better, like simply feel better. And also, I think just enjoy being alone more. I think a big part of self-compassion is starting to enjoy your own company, which can be really hard for people who struggle with their mental health. Because sometimes we prefer to be alone, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we enjoy our own company. At times, we just want to be alone because we don't want to have to put on a show. We don't want to have to be something that we're not, or that we're just not doing very good and we just want to be alone. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we enjoy our own company, I guess, if that makes sense. I think sometimes there's alone time, which is productive and it feels good and you're happy to be with yourself and alone and in your own space and in your own presence. And then other times you just want to be alone because you're kind of more isolating and it's kind of miserable and it's like okay, but you're kind of just numbing yourself to or distracting yourself while you're alone because you don't really want to be totally present with yourself. And those are very two different experiences. So I'm probably going to jump all over the place, but I'll try to keep it as structured as I can. This week has been pretty good. We went camping this weekend, my husband and I. It was really nice to kind of get out of everywhere and just be in nature, watch some birds. I try to get videos of them with my binoculars and my phone because there's like a little notch you can put your phone on so you can get recordings and videos and pictures, but it's just so hard to hold my arms up for that long. And they're little jumpy birds, and so they're like flying all over the place. They're on a branch for literally 2 seconds, so by the time I spot one and I try to get my binoculars up, it's like gone. I would be a liar if I said I was like a bird watcher. I feel like that's a different level. I just enjoy looking at them through my binoculars. It's not really deeper than that right now. I think I would love to do it later on, but I just like where I am. I'm comfortable with my bird watching right now. I don't think I need to go deeper. I don't think I care right now to like know every bird's name. I thought I would and I don't, but maybe someday. Right now it's just the song of a bird is calming to me and grounding. It's very grounding. I think maybe an L this week was that I got not a lot of sleep. We watched kind of a scary movie when we were camping, which was a silly thing to do for somebody with OCD and who tends to ruminate late at night, especially after seeing something scary or weird or disturbing. And the movie was very disturbing and scary and was like religious scary. And so that night I stayed up probably until 4 a.m. until I literally couldn't stay up anymore and ruminate until my brain said, okay, thanks for playing. Good night. I'm going to send you to sleep now. You didn't solve anything, but you got no sleep. Good luck. Good night. So that was miserable. And it was also just scary. Like, I think people who experience OCD and rumination and anxiety or any type of ruminating loop patterns in your head, especially when you're triggered and when you are obsessing over something, those nights or those hours or days or however long it can stick are miserable. And it's so hard to get it out of your head. And it's so hard to just like sit with the uncertainty. Like I was probably a 9 or a 10 on the triggered level. And because it kind of discussed my deepest fears in that movie, which I didn't know. I thought it'd be a cute mystery movie, or like kind of not goofy, just like not super serious. I thought it'd be intense, but not that intense. So I just was ruminating and ruminating, and it felt so real. And I felt like I had to figure out how to move on from this and how I was going to feel better. Even though logically I know that I have OCD and I know that I can ruminate, but it just gets so sticky sometimes. So no matter if you're like a veteran of OCD and recovery, every once in a while there's definitely still things that I really struggle with. So it was kind of it kind of just brought to my awareness that I need to do more exposures again. I think whenever it gets bad, I realize like, okay, this is actually good for me to notice, because I know I need to do a little bit more therapy. And even though I'm not in current therapy, but I have a bunch of the tools from the years that I was in therapy, and I have notes, and I need to like go back to those. Sometimes it can be hard to go back to old notes when you think you've moved on from something, or you've solved something, or you're just past it, is sometimes how I feel. But what's actually helpful is when I'm a little bit less stubborn, I guess, and just admit that I need to look at old notes and I need to be reminded. And it's a good thing, and I'll be happier after I do, and I'll feel more free from the grips of like rigid OCD thinking and just OCD in general. So that was a little bit of a blurb in my weekend. And since then, I have been really tired. So moving on. My dub from this week, I think, is that I have been really on top of getting my stuff done when I get home. And this sounds so silly, but cleaning up after myself, because it drives my husband insane when I leave stuff around the house. And by driving insane, I mean he'll ask me to not do that anymore. And it's not like I'm a total mess, but I just have more stuff. And so I don't always put it away. Like I have makeup, or like I change outfits like 3 times a day, depending on what I'm doing, because it depends on how comfort or cute or sleep or exercise, like everything has a new outfit. Anyways, I digress, but basically I've just been good at doing that, and I'm proud of myself, because it can be difficult sometimes to change your own behaviors and your own patterns, because sometimes you're in a routine, and sometimes that routine doesn't include a 5-minute blip where I think I said blurb or blip earlier in this episode. I mean, I said blurb, but I think I meant blip, but I don't know what I'm even trying to say. Like a blip in time. Was that a saying? Anyways, I sometimes in your schedule, you have everything planned to where, and I was just talking to my dad about this. Sometimes you just have a plan where it's like, if someone asks you to do something and it's going to take 3 minutes, it does kind of throw off your whole schedule. And sometimes, maybe habitually, in my schedule, I did not take 5 minutes to make sure all the dishes are out of the sink, dried off, put away. It's a simple thing. I know. Okay. We're all raised differently. It's a simple thing, but it's just not in the habit. It's just not in the habit. I'm not in the habit, but now I'm getting in the habit. Just get it done. Just fold the laundry immediately, put it away. You don't have to deal with it again. It's not the end of the world if I do wait, but it does make me feel more stressed if I do wait. And it feels like on all the things that are in my brain on like a to-do list, it just adds more to the to-do list, which makes me feel more anxious. Okay. Anyways, those are my dubs and L's. I kind of slipped those in while I was talking about the topic of today's episode, but we'll just get back into the topic of today's episode, which again is self-compassion, not comparing yourself. We're kind of going all over the place, but let's rein it in. Let's start with, first thing is how hating yourself, or by being rude or mean or nasty to yourself, or punishing yourself in any way, is not going to help you in any way. Sometimes there is a narrative, I think, that we hear or we see or we do that is, okay, if I do something bad, or if I do something that I feel a little bit guilty about later on, or if I mess something up, if I don't turn in a work assignment on time, even though I had time, I just procrastinated. You make a mistake. You do something knowingly or unknowingly, whatever it is. Sometimes our first response is to be very mean to ourselves. And sometimes our first response is to immediately kind of beat ourselves up. And I think that is internally different for everybody. Like what that actually looks like, that could look more of like an external practice of, okay, I'm going to go on a really long run and I'm not going to stretch before and I'm not going to stretch after. Like I just deserve to feel pain. I don't know if anyone has done that, but that's like an external example. But an internal example can also just be, okay, well now I'm not going to go on a run. I wanted to go on a run, but like I suck anyway, so what's the point? I'm just going to stay home and not do anything. Like I'm just going to watch something. And that can also be a form of punishing yourself. There's a billion different ways that we do it, and I think just to identify what we're doing to punish ourselves is to think about, is this really what I want to spend my time doing? Or am I doing this to numb or avoid or punish? Or another thing you can ask yourself is this going to make me feel any better after I'm done with this? Is this really going to help me let stuff go? Is it going to let me move on? Is it going to let me improve? Is it going to let me take a deep breath and relax? Is it going to let me get better? Is it going to let me, anything positive? So going back to, sometimes there's a narrative that if we punish ourselves after we do something that we don't like, then that's going to help us, or then that's going to kind of make us hate ourselves so much that we change. And I think there's like two ways that I've kind of thought about this, that like narrative. It's okay to not like a habit that we have. It's very healthy, actually, to probably not like a habit that you have. It's a good thing to want to change that. So I just want to be super clear when I'm saying like, love yourself and to change. It's not like, oh, I love every habit that I have. I love every time I lose my temper. I love when I push people away. I love when I'm not saying you have to love any of those habits. In fact, you can actually really not like those and despise some of the things that you do. But that's where it ends. And there's like being honest with yourself. And there's a phase where you have to be honest with yourself about, okay, instead of like hating myself and talking to myself in such a negative and mean way when I make a mistake, I'm going to give myself a pep talk and say, hey, you don't want to live like this. I know you don't. So don't live like this and make a better choice. Next time you feel like this, do this instead. Next time you committed to going to the gym, or you committed going to a friend's house to help or something like that, that's good. Don't back out. Whatever you felt bad about, be honest with yourself and let yourself kind of grieve. Not like super heavy grieving, but to feel the weight of like, okay, that mistake didn't feel good. I don't want to do that again. Acknowledge the mistake. Let yourself kind of feel bad for it. Acknowledge that, okay, this actually really does matter to me. Because if you kind of act like nothing ever affects you, or that you never feel bad for anything, you never want to get better, that to me causes a lot of depression for me. Like for me, that's how it builds up, and that's kind of the outward expression of everything that I let just pile up. And I don't let myself change, or I don't even like acknowledge that I want to change in an area that I know I deeply want to. But sometimes that can turn into anxiety. Sometimes that just turns into anger, numbness. Like that will come out in an emotional reaction, in an emotional state, and it can be very heavy. So it can be extremely helpful to acknowledge with yourself and to actually change those little behaviors or those little things that you feel a little bit bad for. And then the second thing I wanted to say about the narrative is we acknowledge, okay, yes, I kind of made a mistake. That didn't feel good. I feel bad about that. What can I actually do to change that? Sometimes it's a quick change and it's like a quick little habitual thing, or it's like, I just need to take a deep breath. Sometimes it kind of leads you into a longer self-reflection, diving deeper within to kind of figure out, okay, what kind of things do I believe? Like, why am I feeling so intensely about this? Or why am I acting this way or acting out in this way? So obviously it can lead either way. Like I said, you can hate what you can despise the action that you did or whatever you did that you feel bad for and be like, I don't want anything to do with that anymore. It's okay to feel like that and to just let it go. And I think the feeling of that and acknowledging, like, I didn't like that, I don't want to be like that, is the first step to really letting something roll off your shoulders. Sometimes we maybe assume that hating ourselves and talking so poorly to ourselves and about ourselves is going to have that effect of letting things go or of cleaning ourselves in some way. But, what I've experienced is when I'm really honest with myself about, okay, I need to do better in this. I didn't like that I did this. I feel bad about that. Like, I feel really bad that I did that. That's like step one to feeling like you can resolve it. And that will eventually lead you to a place where you can let that go, whatever you did. Some things won't let go until you've acknowledged, and also some things don't want to let go because a part of you really wants to change that. So until you acknowledge and like realize, oh, I don't want to be like this anymore, or I don't want to do this anymore, or have this habit, or treat people this way, it's going to keep nagging at you. And that's a good thing. I would always prefer something nagging at me, and then that way I can actually change that and feel more free and feel better and feel like a weight lifted. So, anyways, I hope that makes sense. But it's really important to not start to be mean to yourself when you make a mistake, because that will just pile on and pile on and pile on until you're like, well, it doesn't matter anyways. I'm miserable anyways. And that's not a good place to be. And even if you're there, and sometimes when we get there, we're like, oh, it's not that bad. We're comfortable here. But I don't think we're really ever happy when we're there, when we're like numbing, like, I don't care. Well, I don't care. That's not where we're happy. That's not where we're actually living and thriving and we feel. So I think sometimes when you are there and maybe you are feeling numb or super heavy, it can just be you're not, maybe a part of you is ignoring things that should not be ignored and are asking to be felt and seen and listened to. There's a lot of loud things going on all the time. Like, there's a lot of external noise, good, bad, everything in between. But the most important, I think, voice you could listen to is what I would believe is God, but maybe what other people would think is the universe or something that's higher than us, and something also that's within us. And it's really loud out there, so it can be hard to kind of shut out the noise and really listen to what's going on inside, and to really listen to what is happening in here. But sometimes the most painful part is just the initial turning the TV off or the initial turning off your phone. But then once you kind of get into that space and you let yourself be bored, or you let yourself start to acknowledge these things and take accountability for what you're doing and how you're living and everything like that, I think that's where we can start to take those steps to eventually let some of that stuff go off our shoulders. Because that to me is a huge practice of self-compassion. We make so many mistakes every day, even if it's not like necessarily a moral mistake or a huge thing. It's just maybe you forgot something, and you are a little bit more maybe a perfectionist, and so you're like, oh, I shouldn't have forgotten that. Like, I shouldn't have forgotten that. It's okay to feel that way. Like, you feel bad that you forgot that. It doesn't feel good because it meant something to someone or whatever it is. And once we acknowledge that, once we feel that, once we look at that, then it's easier to let that go and just let ourselves move on from it. Yeah, because we just make a lot of mistakes every day. So I think if we're not on top of that, and if we're not actively trying to make sure that we're doing okay, honestly, and checking in with ourselves and where we're at, and like if we're happy, then it can definitely start to lead. Then it can start to pile up. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about within the same realm of self-compassion is just a gentle reminder, because we all need it all the time. I need this probably once every 2 weeks, is to not compare yourself. This is easier said than done. Sometimes I think we can get into a mindset of comparison where we feel like it's doing something good for us because I don't really know why, honestly, but sometimes it just feels like it's being productive in some mean, twisted way. But it really is not doing anything for us. It really is the thief of joy. Think about how much better your life would be if you never felt the urge, or if you've never compared yourself to other people. That is like pure freedom. That feels like peace. That feels slow, but in a good way, where you're not competing with everyone. What I think is interesting, and something that I have to remind myself, because I do think competition can be healthy, but competing is healthy in a competition. That is the only place that we really ever need to compete, is in a competition. Everything else, especially just with your own internal world, you do not have to compete with anyone ever. That is not where you're going to find your worth. That is not where you're going to find your joy, is by competing and being better than somebody else, because that kind of is, it's not fruitful. That's like vain. It feels good maybe for a little bit to be like, okay, well, I feel like I'm smarter than them. Let's do a common one. I think a lot of women compare their beauty to other women. And I think in a world where there's a lot of beauty standards, there's a lot of trendy things that are beautiful. I think we are good and then we're bad and then we're good and then we're bad, like culturally at this. I think it's just, that's probably how it's always been forever. Because of that, there's a lot of women comparing their beauty to the woman next to them. I think a part of that is like they attribute that to their worth, and they attribute that to their value, because the second you start to compare, is she prettier than me? Am I prettier than her? That alone is, there's no winning that. Like, even if subjectively to some people you might be prettier, or maybe subjectively to like the current trend of beauty, maybe you fit that mold more. Now what? If you're sitting next to a woman on a bus, if you're having lunch with somebody new, there's no competition right now. But the second you start to compare and create these like, am I smarter than her? Is she smarter than me? Is she more successful than me? Am I more the second you start to do that, you're probably creating space between you and the other person. And B, you've created that competition when there was none to begin with. Once you start the competition, just know there's probably going to always be somebody smarter than you. There's probably going to be somebody who fits the beauty standard of the day more than you. So they will win that title in that fight. And I think we're all smart enough to know that that's just how it works. Like, there's people who are more educated. There's people who have more money. Whatever you're comparing, that's going to differ. There's going to be people better, worse. But then what do you get from that? Because now your worth and now your focus is on this competition that didn't even exist to begin with, versus just having lunch with that girl or just sitting next to some lady on the bus. We all have, I think, the things that we compare ourselves to other people the most with. It's usually things that you think are your entire identity, almost. It can be your work. If you see somebody that's more successful or is getting more recognition at work, you probably very much identify your value in the workplace and where you're working. And so if you're not feeling like you're getting as much as the next person is getting in recognition, then that's not going to feel good. And then that's kind of where you're competing, I guess. And comparing sucks because it just hurts your feelings. Like, all it does is hurt your feelings. If you're starting a new career and you go to a class and there's somebody whose mom was already in that career, and so she's kind of like 5 steps ahead of you already. If you start to compare your talent with their talent, they're probably going to be subjectively better at whatever they're doing because they have done it longer and they maybe just already got something that you haven't gotten yet. But that doesn't equal your worth and how good you will eventually be. Yeah, I think it's just being aware, and I have to remind myself this, it's just being aware of when you are creating the competition that doesn't exist. So that's my 2 cents on that. I really just think comparing is so vain. It's so pointless because it also just doesn't feel very grounding or comforting when we are comparing. It feels like we need to be somebody that we're not. And I very firmly and strongly believe that you are exactly who you are supposed to be and that you are perfectly unique. Nobody can offer the world exactly what you can. And when we compare and we try to be like somebody else, then you kind of lose the magic of being yourself. And I think that's the most important thing you can offer the world. Okay, that's it for that. Now let's do a Dear Abby, and then we will end today's episode. This is also an older DM. I don't know why I found all of these so long ago, but they're saved in my screenshots, and so I'm gonna read this. This is a DM on Instagram. Also, you guys, I need more Dear Abbies. I always do. So if you have a question about anything, just email, just text or call the number that's in the description below on both YouTube and Apple and Spotify and everywhere, and leave a voicemail, or you can text, or just send me a DM. This says, Dear Abby, I think you once talked about this feeling, or I don't know what, but I actually think I might be crazy. Sometimes when I think about myself, I feel like I truly realize who I actually am, but at the same time, I feel detached from myself and someone I don't know. It's like having a truly conscious moment of living whilst every other moment is lived by the unconscious. I talked with many people, but none can relate. Can you? I would say I can relate to that because my OCD turned into like I was like super aware of my awareness. And that turned into a lot of disassociating and also a lot of depersonalization, where I felt I could see something that I recognized, but I had no emotional attachment to it. So, but they're kind of two different experiences for me, because what you're talking about, I feel like, is you feel detached, but you're really aware of your awareness. When I experience that, there's two different times that I experience that. Sometimes when I'm like more, meditating or something like that, I feel that type of release of like, okay, my thoughts are really just floating by, like I don't have to attach to all of my thoughts. But that kind of got hard when my OCD started to be existential OCD, and was super aware of my awareness, and that started to really freak me out because I felt like I was going crazy, and I felt like I just had never experienced a sensation like that. This was also after I took this like CBD Delta 8 gummy thing that I didn't know could have psychoactive reactions. But I definitely had like a huge, I don't know if it was a trip necessarily, but it was the closest thing I have had to something like that. And it was like, it kind of started this year-long situation of, I thought I was like in actual hell. It was really scary, and I thought I was going crazy. And I was convinced that I was going to hurt somebody I loved. I was convinced like my mind felt totally broken. When I learned more about depersonalization and more about my brain and how it functions and how it tries to help us, one of its main coping mechanisms, and is trying to help you by detaching and by disassociating. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but I do know the feeling of trying to grasp reality basically and trying to make it make sense. And your brain's like, no, I don't get it. And so then you start to detach, and it's not a fun place to be. And that even someone talking about it like this would have really triggered me and sent me into like a lot of rumination and a lot of distress and anxiety. But now I feel like I'm like, yeah, I'm alive and I'm aware. And sometimes my brain does weird stuff randomly, and I might feel like I'm not in my own body. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling, and I hate that feeling, but it's just trying to like cope with maybe a lot of feelings. So when I come out of this, I can try to work on whatever I feel like needs to be worked on. And also just like things change, and that's the reality, is that we are aware beings, and that's part of being a human. And join the club. Everyone else is like that too. And that made me feel like more comforted, because it wasn't me trying to solve everything and make it make sense, and what is my exact right way to feel conscious and aware. That was kind of how I would think, is like, what is the exact right way that I need to be thinking about life and that I need to be thinking about my consciousness. That kind of got me stuck for a while. But when I just surrendered and was like, I don't understand, I don't know the perfect way, but I enjoy this, and this feels pretty good to me, like by living in this way, whatever that is. I think there are a lot of people that would relate to that. I never really met anyone that could feel that exact way before. Sometimes when I would talk about that to people, I never really felt totally understood, but just know that there's a lot of people that have experienced like that type of an obsession with OCD. And I'm not saying you have it, but I know people that have OCD that have experienced that type of a feeling, as well as just people who struggle with anxiety or panic or anything, or just like went through a really hard time, or that just went through trauma or something really hard. And so now their brain sometimes does stuff like that. Yeah, it's just your brain trying to help you sometimes. But also, if it really scares you and it's been a long time, it's okay to also go see a therapist and see what they think could help you feel more grounded and in your body again. Cool. Well, that was it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Dear Abby. If you want to support the podcast, I would love that. You can leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, as well as I would love to hear what you guys would want to hear. Okay, I would love to hear what you guys would want me to talk about in future episodes. So you can always DM me or email or text the number in the description below. I also post all my videos on YouTube. And so if you want to watch, you can watch there. But yeah, that's about it, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. And be kind to yourself. Take yourself out. Do something fun. Be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate. Be honest with yourself, okay? To have a better life. You deserve it. And yeah, love you. Bye.
우회전 taking a ride to Johnny late 눈치 보면서 들어가 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들